Do you guys remember when you were little? Do you remember the first day of school? How everything seemed new and exciting? The smell of crayons and construction paper? But also that feeling of vulnerability walking into a new place knowing that you didn't know anyone and that they didn't know you. Well, today we're going back to those days because this week's story is about that. It's about starting over. It's about second chances. And it is about that weird kid who always sat in the back of the class and how maybe he was the hero all along. This is the new kid, ate my crayons, and became my hero. Beginning I was 9 the day Kai Nakamura arrived at Lincoln Elementary. Our art room smelled of tempera paint and sharpened cedar, and every table was a small kingdom ruled by its own rainbow of crayons. Mine Maya sat in perfect order, like soldiers in a box, scarlet, sunshine, midnight, and my pride, a single untouched sapphire blue. I loved that crayon the way sailors love the first glimpse of sky after weeks of storm. One drizzly Tuesday, Ms. Rivera uncapped a fresh box. The other kids cheered, but I kept my crayons closed. I didn't want anyone stealing my blue. I didn't even want to look when Kai stepped through the doorway, wearing a sweater 2 sizes too big and carrying nothing but the echo of his footsteps. His eyes were the color of rain-soaked pavement, and they darted from wall to wall as if searching for an exit that wasn't there. Ms. Rivera placed him at my table. I straightened my crayon soldiers. Protective, the assignment was simple. Draw the sky you dream under. I imagined a dusk so deep it could swallow every bedtime fear. I reached for my sapphire. Kai's fingers thin, trembling rich too. Our fingertips collided. Before I could protest, he slipped the crayon between his teeth and bit down. A brittle crack ricocheted across the room. Blue wax crumbled like glacier ice. Gasps fluttered. My throat filled with the taste of crushed blueberries and betrayal. Tears blurred the paper. My perfect sky bled into salt water. I clutched the ruined stub and turned away, cheeks burning with the heat of 1,000 suns. Conflict Kai did not cry. Instead, he gathered the fallen shards, each tiny speck of blue, and began to move. His hands flew over my page first, then his own, pressing the crumbs into the fibers until the color spread like frost across both sheets. I watched through wet lashes as he tore a strip of tape from the dispenser, lined our papers edge to edge, and sealed them into one wide horizon. When Ms. Rivera crinkled her face and stamped her foot, we jumped. The bell rang, but no one moved. In front of us stretched a sky that belonged to neither of us, yet belonged to both, darker where mine ended, lighter where his began, but seamless. Where the wax was thinnest, the paper showed through like starlight. In that moment, I realized the fracture had not broken the color, it had doubled it. My small square of night was now a cathedral ceiling of dreams I could never have reached alone. Ms. Rivera crouched beside us, her voice soft as chalk dust. She didn't have to speak. Her eyes said it all. Around the room, crayon boxes opened. Scarlet, emerald, gold bits and pieces were passed hand to hand until every table held a patchwork of color no factory could ever package. But it started with Kai's broken blue. For the rest of elementary school, whenever someone new joined our class, some part of me braced for impact, not because I expected trouble, but because I feared losing another piece of myself to the ether. One day it would be a misplaced comma, the next an obscure board game, and eventually, inevitably, a boy named Kai. Years passed and I collected degrees in psychology and creative writing, both useful when trying to understand yourself. Still, something kept returning to haunt me. The boy who ate my crayons. I researched childhood trauma, repressed memories, Piaget's stages of development, but the more I learned, the less sense it made. As my 28th birthday approached, I decided to see a therapist. While she helped me unpack layers of emotional baggage, I never mentioned crayons or Kai. Then one day, after I described a particularly painful memory, she asked, "And what do you think this means?" I shrugged, surprised by the question. "I don't know," I admitted. "I just wanted to talk about it." She nodded knowingly. "Sometimes bringing things out of the dark helps lift their power over us," she explained. "It's like putting a scary story on a bookshelf instead of under your bed." That day, I wrote a story about a girl who lost her favorite crayon. By the time I finished, I'd given her a name, Maya. I'd changed the color to sapphire. And when I read it aloud to my therapist, I felt a wave of peace wash over me. I knew then that the only thing left to do was find Kai. With a little digging, I discovered he lived in a nearby city. I sent him a message on a social media platform. We exchanged photos. He looked older, but something in his eyes remained the same, rain-soaked pavement. We met in the middle, at a small cafe near his house. Over cups of hot chocolate, I explained why I'd tracked him down. "You really should write that story," he said, nodding toward the notepad in my hands. "What would that mean?" I asked. He smiled. "It means you're giving away something precious, something you've held on to for a long time." I hesitated. "But won't people forget about me if I let go?" Kai reached across the table and took my hands in his. His were rough, calloused. "No, you're not letting go," he said. "You're passing it on. The best stories live inside people long after we tell them." The sun slanted through the window, catching the steam rising from my chocolate. In that quiet cafe, surrounded by the scent of old books and brewing coffee, I felt a crayon snap between my fingers. I reached down to pick up the pieces, but Kai stopped me with a gentle touch. "Don't," he said. "You get to keep the blue." He took my hands in his and pressed them together. "You still have it inside you," he added, squeezing gently before releasing me. "Oh," I whispered, suddenly understanding. It wasn't a story about a boy who ate my crayons. It was a story about a girl who saved a boy. Resolution. I walked home slowly, savoring the late afternoon sun warming my skin. I didn't write the story that day, but when I did, it flowed from my fingertips. Each word felt like a prayer whispered across a crowded room. Days folded into weeks. That taped sky hung on the classroom wall until the tape yellowed and curled. Whenever a new kid arrived, Ms. Rivera told the story without names, but we knew. Kai became the keeper of the crayon box, refilling it with stubs others discarded. He never owned a fresh pack. He never needed one. The truth was, none of us did. Because every time a crayon broke, whether on purpose or by accident, we shared the pieces until they were too small to use. And the best part was, we never ran out of color. After I graduated, I volunteered at Lincoln Elementary, helping Ms. Rivera's first-grade class with their art projects. One day she handed me a box of crayons. They were old, their wooden bodies worn smooth with age. As I sorted them, my fingers brushed against something hard and cold. I pulled out a scrap of tape, stiff with dried glue. Unfurling it slowly, I found a sky printed on the other side. It was faded, torn, but beautiful. And in the bottom corner, scrunched like a forgotten dream, was a shard of sapphire.